The crystal chandeliers of Manhattan's most exclusive cafe cast prismatic light across marble floors as Victoria Blackwood swept past Marcus Chen's outstretched hand, her Louboutin heels clicking dismissively. She settled into her chair, ice blue eyes scanning him with surgical precision, the department store shirt, the calloused hands, the faint grease stain on his cuff. "So you're Marcus," she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Just a mechanic." In exactly 37 minutes, this man she'd dismissed so completely would be the only thing standing between her and three armed killers. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Victoria Blackwood commanded attention the way generals commanded armies, with absolute authority and zero tolerance for weakness. At 35, she ran Apex Capital, a hedge fund that moved $4 billion through global markets with the precision of a Swiss watch. Her corner office occupied the 52nd floor of a building that pierced Manhattan's skyline like a glass needle. Its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city she'd conquered one hostile takeover at a time. This particular Friday morning, she'd eaten breakfast alone at a dining table that could seat 12. Her reflection multiplied in polished black marble until she couldn't distinguish which version was real. The penthouse had cost her $8 million, but the silence that filled it was priceless, or so she told herself. 3 years ago, she'd stood in St. Bartholomew's Cathedral wearing a Vera Wang wedding dress that cost more than most people's annual salary. 600 guests had gathered to witness her marriage to Richard Pemberton III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. Instead, they'd witnessed her transformation. Richard had chosen that morning to empty their joint accounts $14 million and disappear with his 22-year-old assistant to the Caymans. The wedding photographer, not knowing what else to do, had kept shooting. Those photos still existed somewhere, documenting in high resolution the exact moment Victoria Blackwood stopped believing in love and started believing in power. The humiliation had crystallized in her chest like amber, preserving that moment forever. She'd stood at that altar for 17 minutes before walking out her train, dragging behind her like the corpse of her former self. The law firm she'd hired found Richard eventually. Not to get the money back that was gone, scattered across offshore accounts like ashes. She'd hired them to destroy him. By the time her lawyers were finished, Richard couldn't get a job managing a McDonald's, let alone another hedge fund. His family had disowned him. His new girlfriend had left him for someone with functioning credit cards. Victoria had rebuilt herself with the dedication of a plastic surgeon working on a burn victim. Every soft edge was carved away, replaced with sharp angles that drew blood when touched. She'd turned Apex Capital from a modest investment firm into a financial weapon specializing in hostile takeovers that left companies gutted and founders weeping in boardrooms. "Vulnerability is death," she'd told a reporter from Forbes who'd asked about her management style. "I don't hire people who need hand-holding. I hire killers who know that second place is just the first loser." The reporter had included that quote in a profile titled "The Ice Queen of Wall Street." Victoria had framed it. Marcus Chen moved through the world with the careful stillness of someone who'd learned that the most dangerous threats rarely announced themselves. At 37, he carried himself like a man walking through a minefield he'd memorized, but never quite trusted. Those scarred hands that Victoria saw only as evidence of manual labor had once assembled M4 rifles in pitch darkness, had held pressure on wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, had built his daughter Emma a treehouse that could withstand a Category 3 hurricane. The oil stain on his cuff wasn't carelessness, it was kindness. He'd fixed Mrs. Rodriguez's car at 5:30 that morning so she could make her shift at the hospital. She'd tried to pay him, but he'd refused. Her son was in his unit in Afghanistan. Had been. The least Marcus could do was keep his mother's ancient Honda running. What Victoria couldn't see, what his calm exterior carefully concealed, was that Marcus still woke at exactly 3:17 some mornings, his hands slick with blood that had been scrubbed away years ago. 4 years since Helmand Province, but his body hadn't gotten the message that the war was over. He still mapped escape routes in every building he entered. Still counted people in every room, noted their positions, their hands, their potential as threats or casualties. The civilian world wanted him to forget his training, to pack it away with his dress blues and his Purple Heart. But training had become his skeleton. Remove it, and he'd collapse. He turned down private military contracts worth $200,000 a year because Emma needed a father who came home every night with grease under his fingernails, not one who might come home in a flag-draped box. His ex-wife Sarah hadn't understood that. She'd wanted the man who'd left for his first deployment, cheerful, optimistic, quick to laugh. That man had died somewhere between Kandahar and Kabul, replaced by someone who checked the locks 4 times before bed and kept a loaded Glock in a biometric safe. "You're not the man I married," Sarah had said during their last fight, and she'd been right. The man she'd married wouldn't have survived what he'd seen. This new version, quieter, watchful, dangerous, had kept breathing when better men hadn't. Their mutual friend Ashley Novak had orchestrated this meeting with the precision of a military operation. She'd told Victoria it was a business contact regarding classic car investments. She'd told Marcus that a potential client needed restoration work on a vintage Mustang. Both stories were lies wrapped in just enough truth to be believed. Ashley had known them both since college, had watched Victoria's transformation from a woman who'd loved Renaissance poetry to one who quoted Sun Tzu's Art of War in board meetings. She'd seen Marcus return from his 3rd deployment fundamentally rewired, like someone had replaced his operating system while keeping the same hardware. "You need to remember what it feels like to be human," Ashley had told Victoria over drinks the week before. "I am human," Victoria had replied. "I'm just not weak." Those aren't mutually exclusive. In my experience, they are. With Marcus, Ashley had been more direct. "You need to meet someone who won't treat you like you're broken." "I am broken," he'd said, simply adjusting a carburetor in his garage while Emma did homework at his workbench. "No, you're repaired. There's a difference. Repaired things are often stronger than they were originally." Now in the gleaming cafe that charged $18 for a latte, Victoria studied Marcus like he was a hostile takeover target. She noted the Timex watch, practical, inexpensive, precisely 3 minutes fast. Military habit, she assumed correctly. The slight favor of his left side suggested an old injury. The way his eyes tracked every movement in the cafe spoke of hypervigilance that probably exhausted him. "Working with your hands," she mused, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness. "Must be so liberating. No board meetings, no quarterly projections, no real consequences beyond whether an engine starts." She smiled, the expression sharp enough to leave scars. "Though I imagine the intellectual stimulation plateaus quickly. What do you think about under those cars?" "Grocery lists, sports scores." Marcus recognized the interrogation technique immediately. "Establish superiority. Probe for weakness. Maintain psychological distance." He'd used similar tactics in Afghanistan, though, usually with less expensive coffee involved. He noticed things about her that she'd carefully hidden. The way her fingers drummed against the table in patterns that suggested anxiety medication, Xanax probably, or Klonopin. The designer sunglasses she kept touching, ready to deploy like armor if needed. The way she'd positioned her phone for easy recording, probably a habit from contentious business meetings. The slight tremor in her left hand that she covered by keeping it in constant motion. "Yesterday I thought about viscosity," he said evenly, his Oklahoma accent barely a whisper after years of conscious suppression. "How oil behaves under extreme pressure. How something designed to reduce friction can under the wrong conditions become destructive, like when it burns too hot and turns to sludge, destroying the very engine it's meant to protect." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "Also thought about my daughter's science project on Venus. Did you know the atmospheric pressure there is 90 times what we experience on Earth? It would crush a human in seconds. Makes you appreciate breathing." Victoria's smile flickered. She hadn't expected resistance, certainly not delivered with such surgical precision. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. She was the oil burning too hot, destroying what she was meant to protect. "How wonderfully esoteric," she said, leaning back in calculated dismissal. "Though I suppose someone has to understand the mundane mechanics. Yesterday, I closed a $300 million acquisition that will reshape the biotech industry. 14,000 jobs restructured for efficiency." "Restructured," Marcus repeated, tasting the word. "That's a pleasant way to say fired. It's an accurate way to say optimized. How many of those 14,000 have kids? Mortgages, medical bills." Victoria's eyes flashed dangerously. "The market doesn't care about individual sob stories. Evolution doesn't stop for the weak. Neither did Pol Pot." The comparison landed like a slap wrapped in silk. Victoria set down her cup hard enough to crack the saucer. Are you comparing me to a genocidal dictator? I'm comparing philosophies. The strong survive, the weak perish. It's efficient, brutal, and it assumes that strength is measured only in one dimension. He shifted slightly, a movement that would have been imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent years reading body language for survival. Funny thing about evolution, though, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the most adaptable. Adapt or die. I chose to adapt. Into what? The question hung between them, deceptively simple and devastatingly precise. Victoria felt something crack in her chest, hairline, fractures in armor she'd spent 3 years forging. Someone who doesn't get left at the altar with 600 witnesses to her humiliation. She said the words escaping before she could stop them. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened almost imperceptibly. And I adapted into someone who doesn't get his squad killed because he trusted the wrong intelligence. We all carry our ghosts, Ms. Blackwood. Some of us just dress them in more expensive clothes. While Victoria processed this unexpected vulnerability, Marcus's attention had already split. 3 men had entered the cafe 4 minutes ago, their movements too coordinated for strangers, too careful for friends. They'd chosen tables that created overlapping fields of fire, turning the cafe into a killing box. The one by the window kept touching his ribs, checking a concealed weapon. The Glock 19. Marcus identified by the printing pattern. Common, reliable, easy to acquire illegally. The leader by the door had the 1,000-yard stare Marcus recognized from mirrors, someone who'd killed before and made peace with it. The third, twitchy and sweating despite the cool morning, was clearly the weak link, an addict probably desperate enough to do something stupid. Marcus's body shifted into combat mode without conscious thought. His breathing deepened, oxygenating his blood for what was coming. His peripheral vision expanded, taking in every potential weapon, every piece of cover, every civilian who might become a casualty. Calculate distances: 8 feet to the nearest hostile, 12 to the kitchen and its knives, 15 to the exit, 23 civilians in the blast radius if this went loud. Inventory weapons. Ceramic plates that could be thrown or shattered into cutting implements, glass pitcher heavy enough to fracture a skull. The tactical pen he carried from habit, a gift from a squad mate who'd said, "Just because you're out doesn't mean you're safe." "Would you mind switching seats?" Marcus interrupted Victoria mid-sentence about a leveraged buyout in Tokyo. His voice carried a new authority that made her pause. "I need to face the door." She laughed, bright and cutting. "How delightfully paranoid. Do you think someone's going to rappel through the windows? This is Tribeca, not Tora Bora." "Please." The word carried weight that had nothing to do with politeness. Something in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there moments before, made her comply. As they switched, she added, "I suppose this is some macho military thing. Ashley mentioned you served. Couldn't hack civilian life." The insult barely registered. Marcus was watching the leader's hand disappear inside his jacket, the movement too practiced to be casual. The other 2 had stopped pretending to drink their coffee. Whatever was about to happen had passed the point of no return. His hand found his phone thumb hovering over 911, but he knew it would be too late. Response time in this part of Manhattan averaged 4 minutes. These men would be finished in 2. "Listen carefully," he said, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "In about 30 seconds, something bad is going to happen. When it does, you go low and left toward the kitchen. Don't ask questions. Don't hesitate. Don't look back. Can you do that?" Victoria started to laugh again, but the sound died in her throat. His entire demeanor had changed. The mild-mannered mechanic was gone, replaced by something that made her primitive brain scream danger. Not danger to her, danger to anyone who threatened her. "What are you talking about? Can you do that?" He repeated each word precise as a bullet. She nodded, unable to speak. Her body had recognized what her mind was still processing. She was sitting across from a predator who'd chosen to protect rather than hunt. The college-aged waitress approaching the 3 men never stood a chance. She was new, probably her first week, still learning to balance the heavy trays while navigating between tables. Her sneaker caught on something, a bag strap, a chair leg, nothing, and time dilated the way it does before catastrophe. The tray crashed down, coffee exploding across marble in patterns that looked like blood spatter. The man by the window jumped up, cursing his jacket flying open. The Glock was clearly visible black polymer against white shirt death, given form and function. For a moment, nobody moved. The cafe held its breath reality, refusing to process what everyone was seeing. Then training took over and Marcus's hand shot across the table, gripping Victoria's wrist hard enough to bruise. Now! The world exploded into chaos. 3 guns appeared simultaneously, choreographed like a deadly ballet. The men moved with the coordination of people who'd rehearsed this moment, probably in some abandoned warehouse, probably high on adrenaline and desperation. Everyone on the ground, this is a robbery, nobody moves, nobody dies. The leader's voice cracked on the last word, revealing his age, maybe 25 too young for the weight, in his eyes, too old for what he was about to do. Victoria's mind, that beautiful machine that could process market fluctuations and hostile takeovers with computer-like efficiency, simply stopped. The gun pointed at the ceiling looked impossibly large, impossibly real. Her body wouldn't respond to commands. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, crushed competitors, built an empire from spite and ambition. None of it mattered now. She was 7 years old again, hiding in her bedroom closet while her parents screamed downstairs, their marriage dying in real time, helpless and small and terrified. Marcus moved before thought, his hand pulling her down and under the table with enough force to send her Louboutin skittering across marble. His body positioned itself between her and the gunman, a human shield she hadn't asked for and didn't deserve. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice different now. Not the gentle mechanic or patient father, but something forged in places where orders meant survival. "Don't look at them. Don't be memorable. Control your breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Do it now." His own breathing had already shifted, oxygen flooding his system for what was coming. The familiar cocktail of adrenaline and absolute calm washed through him. Time dilated the way it always did before violence, seconds stretching into hours, allowing him to see everything, process everything, plan everything. The nearest gunman, the addict, was harassing an elderly couple, yanking the woman's purse hard enough to send her sprawling. Her cry of pain made him laugh high and manic. "That's right, Grandma, hand it all over, jewelry too. That wedding ring looks expensive." He was 6 feet away now, close enough that Marcus could smell the sour sweat of withdrawal, see pupils contracted to pinpoints, track the tremor in his gun hand. An addict robbing for a fix was unpredictable but vulnerable. Reaction times compromised, peripheral vision narrowed, decision-making impaired. Victoria pressed herself against the floor, feeling cold marble through her silk blouse, worth more than most people's monthly rent. She could see Marcus's hand around the water pitcher fingers, testing its weight with the same precision she used evaluating portfolios. There was no hesitation in his movements, no fear, just calculation. She watched him breathe steady as a metronome, while her own breath came in panicked gasps that made her dizzy. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, sounds too loud, everything too much. Her body was betraying her, reverting to prey when she'd spent 3 years becoming a predator. When the addict was close enough, Marcus moved with violence so precise it looked choreographed. The pitcher became a weapon, swinging in an arc that connected with the man's temple, with a wet crack that made Victoria's stomach lurch. The gunman dropped instantly, his weapon clattering away across marble that was now splattered with blood. Marcus was already moving, scooping up the gun with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber in a motion so automatic it looked like breathing. Press check magazine, release magazine, reinsert chamber round. The muscle memory of 1,000 repetitions in training, 10,000 in combat. Kitchen, move. He hauled Victoria to her feet, half carrying her as bullets shattered the coffee machine they'd been sitting beside moments before. The sound was impossibly loud, a physical force that made her ears ring. She stumbled, her designer heels worse than useless, her body not designed for this kind of movement. Without hesitation, Marcus's arm went around her waist, lifting her partially off the ground as he moved them both behind the relative safety of the service counter. The marble was thick enough to stop handgun rounds, probably. He'd seen similar material fail in Baghdad, but this wasn't the time for probability calculations. Victoria's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. This man she'd dismissed as simple, whom she'd mocked for his blue-collar job, moved like something out of a Bourne movie. Every action, economical, purposeful, lethal. When he checked corners, when he moved through space, When he held the weapon, it all spoke of years of training, of muscle memory earned in places where mistakes meant closed caskets and folded flags. Two hostiles remaining, he said more to himself than her. Leader at 12 o'clock using the mother as shield. Second shooter flanking left, trying to pin us down. His free hand found her face, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were calm, focused, absolutely certain. Victoria, I need you to listen. When I move, you go through that kitchen door. There's an exit to the alley. Run and don't stop. Understand? She nodded, unable to speak. Her designer armor was gone, stripped away by terror, leaving only the core of who she was, a woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten they were still made of paper. The leader's voice cut through chaos. Come out, hero! Come out or I start shooting civilians. You've got 5 seconds. 5. A child's scream pierced the air. Through the service window, Victoria could see the leader had grabbed a little girl, maybe 6 years old, pressing his gun to her temple while her mother sobbed and begged. The girl's face was streaked with tears and snot, her small body shaking so hard it looked like she might shatter. 4. 3. Marcus's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping beneath skin. Victoria saw the war playing out behind his eyes, tactical assessment versus human cost. Save one versus save many. The mathematics of combat that no one should have to calculate. 2. Wait, Marcus called out, already moving. I'm coming out. Let the girl go. He set the gun on the counter, visible but not abandoned, and stepped out with hands raised. Victoria watched from her hiding spot as he became deliberately vulnerable, offering himself as a target. The leader's gun swung toward him, the little girl momentarily forgotten. You killed Diego, the leader said, voice thick with something that might have been grief. He was my cousin. My blood. Victoria could see Marcus's face and profile, saw him process this information, recalibrate. He's not dead, Marcus said, voice steady and sure. Concussed, maybe a skull fracture, but alive. I know where to hit to drop someone without killing them. Your cousin needs medical attention, but he'll survive if we end this now. The leader's gun hand trembled. Up close, Victoria could see he was young, maybe 23, with exhaustion that came from carrying too much weight too long. You don't understand, he said. They've got my daughter. Said if I don't pay by tonight. His voice cracked. She's 8, same age as... He looked at the girl he was holding, seemed to really see her for the first time. The gun lowered slightly. The second shooter, still by the window, shifted nervously. Tommy, we gotta go. Cops will be here any second. Shut up! Tommy screamed, gun swinging wildly between Marcus and the crowd. Just shut up and let me think. Marcus took a small step forward, hands still raised. Tommy, look at me. I've got a daughter too. Her name's Emma. She's 7. Likes dinosaurs and soccer and chocolate chip pancakes. Another step. I know what it's like to feel like you'd do anything to protect them. But this isn't the way. You're not this guy, Tommy. You're a father who got desperate. Don't become something your daughter would be ashamed of. Victoria watched transfixed as Marcus slowly transformed the dynamics of the situation. His voice never rose, never threatened. He was using empathy as a weapon, connection as strategy. She'd negotiated $100 million deals with less skill than he was showing now. You don't know anything, Tommy said, but the gun lowered another inch. You don't know what it's like to owe the wrong people, to watch them send videos of your kid at school, at the park, letting you know they can take her any time. Then let's figure this out together, Marcus said. But first, let the little girl go. You're not this guy, Tommy. You're a father who got desperate. Don't become something else. For a moment, the world balanced on a knife's edge. Then Tommy released the girl, who ran sobbing to her mother. The gun dropped to his side, exhaustion winning over adrenaline. I didn't know what else to do. That's when the second shooter acted. Maybe he saw the situation dissolving. Maybe he was just more desperate than Tommy. But his gun swung toward Marcus with lethal intent. Enough talking. Victoria didn't think. She couldn't think. Her body moved on instinct, grabbing the fire extinguisher from the wall and swinging it like her life depended on it, which it probably did. The metal cylinder connected with the shooter's skull with a sound like a gong being struck. He dropped instantly, his gun firing once into the ceiling as he fell. Plaster rained down like snow, covering everything in white dust that made the scene look like something from a nightmare. The shot seemed to wake Tommy from his trance. He raised his gun again, pointed it at Marcus' finger on the trigger. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry, but I can't go to prison. My daughter—" Marcus moved faster than Victoria's eyes could follow. He knocked Tommy's gun hand aside just as it fired the bullet, shattering a window instead of finding flesh. They went down together, rolling across broken glass and spilled coffee that mixed with blood in abstract patterns. Tommy fought with the strength of desperation, but Marcus fought with the precision of training. A strike to the median nerve made Tommy's hand spasm open. An elbow to the solar plexus drove the air from his lungs. A careful chokehold, held just long enough, sent him into unconsciousness. Marcus rolled away, gasping, his shirt torn and bloody from glass. He looked up to find Victoria standing over him with the fire extinguisher still raised, ready to strike again if needed. Her designer outfit was ruined, her perfect makeup streaked with tears and sweat and plaster dust, but her eyes blazed with something fierce and protective. "I told you to run," he said. "Yeah, well." Her voice shook but held humor. "I've never been good at following orders. Ask anyone." Sirens finally cut through the air, growing louder by the second. Police burst through doors moments later, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Marcus immediately dropped to his knees, hands visible, making himself non-threatening. He'd been through enough military-police interactions to know that heroes and threats looked identical in chaos. The police sorted through the chaos with practiced efficiency, separating victims from suspects, witnesses from participants. Marcus kept his hands visible, answering questions with military precision. "Yes, sir. No, sir." 3 hostiles total. The Glock was legally registered to the first suspect. He'd used minimum necessary force. Yes, he had combat experience. Afghanistan 3 tours. Honorable discharge. A paramedic young enough to be fresh from training insisted on examining him. When she cut away his torn shirt to check for injuries, Victoria saw the full map of his history written in scar tissue. Bullet wounds that looked like cruel stars. Shrapnel marks spreading like constellation patterns. Burns that must have taken months to heal, each one a moment when he'd chosen to stand between danger and innocence. "Sir, we need to get you to the hospital," the paramedic said, indicating the deep gash along his ribs where Tommy's wild shot had grazed him deeper than he'd let on. Blood seeped steadily through the temporary bandage. "I'm fine," Marcus protested, but his face had gone pale beneath his tan adrenaline no longer masking pain. "My daughter Emma. School gets out at 3. I need to—" "I'll handle it," Victoria said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "What school? I'll have her picked up and brought to the hospital." Marcus studied her face, this woman who'd spent 2 hours dissecting his supposed failures, who'd wielded her success like a scalpel to vivisect his life choices. The woman who'd just saved his life with a fire extinguisher and reflexes he hadn't expected. Why? The question hung between them, demanding honesty. "Because," she said slowly, "you just bled for strangers, for me. After I—" She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the cruelty she'd shown. "Please, let me do this one thing." He gave her the school information and his ex-wife's contact for the pickup list. As paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, Victoria climbed in without asking permission. "Ma'am, are you family?" the paramedic asked. I'm with him," Victoria said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. The ride to Mount Sinai took 12 minutes through Manhattan traffic sirens, carving a path through the urban maze. Victoria watched Marcus fight to stay conscious, his training warring with blood loss. His lips moved slightly, and she leaned closer to hear. "Tell Emma I'm okay," he whispered. "Tell her the bad guys are gone. Tell her Daddy kept everyone safe." "Tell her yourself what?" Victoria said, gripping his hand harder than necessary. "You're not dying from a graze soldier. That would be embarrassingly anticlimactic." He actually smiled at that, though it turned into a wince as the ambulance hit a pothole. "Soldier," he repeated. "Haven't been called that in 4 years. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Isn't that what they say? They say a lot of things. Most of them are lies told to make civilians feel better about what we do." The hospital was controlled chaos medical staff, moving with the same coordinated precision the robbers had attempted but failed to achieve. Victoria found herself relegated to a waiting room that smelled of disinfectant and despair. While they took Marcus into surgery, the graze was deeper than it looked, nicking something that needed repair. She used the time to make calls. First to Marcus's ex-wife Sarah, whose initial hostility melted into concern when Victoria explained the situation. "Is he going to be okay?" Sarah asked, and Victoria heard genuine care beneath the question. "The doctors say yes. He was incredible, Sarah. He saved everyone." A pause. "That sounds like Marcus. He was always better at saving strangers than saving himself." Next, Victoria called her assistant, canceling her afternoon meetings, with excuses that felt trivial billion-dollar deals suddenly seeming less important than a 7-year-old girl who needed to know her father was safe. Emma arrived at 4:30, delivered by Sarah, who looked exactly like Victoria had imagined, soft. Where Victoria was sharp, warm. Where Victoria was cold. The kind of woman who baked cookies from scratch and remembered birthdays. The kind of woman Marcus had probably loved before war rewired him into something she couldn't recognize. Emma had her father's eyes dark and serious, taking in everything with an intensity unusual in someone so young. She wore a school uniform with grass stains on the knees and carried a backpack covered in dinosaur patches. "Are you the princess lady?" Emma asked Victoria directly. No preamble. Victoria blinked. "I'm sorry. Daddy said he was meeting a princess today, someone who lives in a tower and doesn't come down much." Sarah looked embarrassed. "Emma, that's not polite." "It's accurate," Victoria interrupted, something twisting in her chest. "I do live in a tower, 52nd floor." Emma considered this. "That's very high. Don't you get lonely?" The question, delivered with the devastating honesty only children possessed, made Victoria's throat close. "Sometimes," she admitted. "You should get a dog," Emma advised. "Dogs help with lonely. We have a dog named Sergeant. Daddy says he's a good soldier even though he's scared of cats." When the doctor finally emerged, still in surgical scrubs, Victoria and Sarah stood simultaneously. Emma grabbed Victoria's hand, and Victoria was surprised to find herself squeezing back. "Mr. Chen is stable," the doctor said. "The bullet did more damage than it appeared nicked the intercostal artery. He lost a significant amount of blood, but we've repaired the damage. He's asking for his daughter." Emma pulled Victoria along as she rushed to follow the doctor, apparently having decided Victoria was part of this whether she'd planned to be or not. Marcus looked smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed like electronic prayers. His face was pale, making the old scars stand out like accusations. But his eyes were alert, immediately finding Emma. "Hey, baby girl," he said, voice rough from the breathing tube they'd removed. Emma climbed carefully onto the bed, curling against his uninjured side with the practice of someone who'd done this before. "Mom said you were a hero," she said. Again. "Just did what needed doing." "That's what you always say." Victoria stood awkwardly by the door, feeling like an intruder in this intimate moment, but Marcus's eyes found hers over Emma's head. "You stayed," he said, surprised. "You bled," she replied, as if that explained everything. "Maybe it did." Sarah touched Victoria's arm. "Thank you for calling me, for making sure Emma got here safely." "It was nothing." "No," Sarah said firmly. "It wasn't. Marcus doesn't let people in easily. Not anymore. The fact that he trusted you with Emma's school information, that means something." Plus, Victoria wanted to say that he shouldn't trust her, that she was the exact kind of person he protected others from, cold, calculating, cruel. But Emma was looking at her with those serious eyes, and the words wouldn't come. "Daddy," Emma said, "is the princess lady your girlfriend?" The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. "We just met today, Em," Marcus said carefully. "But she stayed," Emma pointed out with child's logic. "And she's holding your hand." Victoria looked down, startled to realize she was indeed holding his hand, had been since she'd entered the room. She started to pull away, but Marcus's fingers tightened slightly. "Maybe," he told his daughter, "we could be friends first, see how that goes." Emma considered this. "Okay, but she needs to learn about dinosaurs. Friends know about dinosaurs." "I can learn," Victoria said, surprising herself. "I'm actually very good at learning." "T-Rex is the best." Emma informed her solemnly. But Daddy likes velociraptors because they're tactical. Tactical dinosaurs, Victoria repeated, catching Marcus's eye. Of course he does. Sarah stayed another hour, then left with Emma after extracting promises from Marcus that he'd rest, that he'd call if he needed anything, that he wouldn't try to check himself out early, apparently a recurring issue. Alone with Victoria for the first time since the violence, Marcus studied her. She'd washed the plaster dust from her face, but her designer outfit was ruined blood and dust and coffee, creating abstract patterns on silk that had probably cost more than his monthly rent. Why did you really stay, Tot? He asked. Victoria moved to the window, looking out at Manhattan's skyline, beginning to glitter with evening lights. From up here, the city looked peaceful, ordered, nothing like the chaos they'd survived. 3 years ago, she began, I stood in front of 600 people in a $30,000 wedding dress and waited for a man who wasn't coming. He'd taken everything, money, dignity, faith, in the basic decency of human beings. I rebuilt myself into someone who couldn't be hurt like that again. Someone harder, meaner, more successful than everyone else. She turned to face him. Today you made all of that irrelevant. My money, my power, my carefully constructed armor, none of it mattered when those guns came out. What mattered was your courage, your willingness to bleed for strangers. For me, after I'd been deliberately cruel to you. You were protecting yourself, Marcus said. I could see it from the moment you sat down. The way you kept checking exits, the way you held your phone like a shield ready to record if things went wrong. Something happened to you that made you decide attack was safer than vulnerability. And you just saw that in 5 minutes? Trauma recognizes trauma, he said simply. I came back from Afghanistan with pieces missing. Not physical pieces, those healed, but parts of me that knew how to trust, how to relax, how to believe the world was basically safe. Sarah tried to love me back to who I was before, but that person died in Helmand Province with my squad. All I could do was build something new from what was left. Victoria returned to his bedside, sinking into the uncomfortable visitor's chair. How do you do it, function, I mean? Build something from the wreckage. One day at a time. Emma helps. Kids don't let you maintain distance. They need all of you, not just the parts you've decided are safe to show. I don't know anything about kids. Neither did I until Emma was born. Held her for the first time in Bagram on a video call. 14 hours old and 7,000 miles away. I promised her I'd come home, that I'd be the father she deserved. Took me 3 more tours to keep that promise, and by then I wasn't sure I had enough left to give her. But you did. I gave her what I had. Turned out to be enough. Not perfect, but enough. They sat in comfortable silence, the hospital's nocturnal symphony, playing around them, distant voices rolling carts, the eternal beeping of machines keeping watch. I should go, Victoria said eventually. Let you rest. You could stay, Marcus offered. That chair reclines, probably. Why would you want me to stay, after how I treated you? Because you swung a fire extinguisher at an armed man to save my life. Because you held my daughter's hand when she was scared. Because underneath all that armor, I think there's someone worth knowing. Victoria felt tears threaten the first she'd allowed since that morning 3 years ago, when she'd stood at an altar in front of everyone she knew and realized she was alone. I don't know how to be worth knowing anymore, she admitted. Then we'll figure it out together, if you want. She stayed. The chair did recline barely, and she dozed fitfully, waking every time Marcus shifted or made a sound of pain. Around 3 a.m, she knew because she checked her phone. She heard him mumbling, caught in some nightmare. Jackson, stay down, medic. We need a medic here. She moved to his bedside, took his hand, spoke softly. Marcus, you're safe. You're in New York. The war's over. His eyes snapped open, wild and unfocused, seeing some Afghan mountainside instead of a hospital room. They're in the wire, he said urgently. They're in the wire, and Jackson's hit, and Marcus. She made her voice firm, authoritative, the voice that commanded boardrooms. Look at me. You're in Mount Sinai Hospital. It's April 15th, 2024. You saved everyone in the cafe today. Emma was here earlier. She's safe. Everyone's safe. Slowly, his eyes focused on her face. The past released its grip reluctantly, leaving him gasping like he'd been underwater. Victoria, I'm here. Jackson died, he said quietly. Bled out while I was trying to hold his guts in. 22 years old, had a baby daughter he'd never met. I'm sorry. I have his picture in my wallet, him and the others, 4 good men who didn't come home because I made the wrong call. What happened? Intelligence said the village was friendly. I believed them. Led my squad in without proper reconnaissance. It was an ambush. By the time we fought our way out, 4 were dead, 3 more wounded. I got a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. They got folded flags. Victoria squeezed his hand. It wasn't your fault. I was squad leader. Everything was my fault. She understood that logic, the brutal arithmetic of command, where responsibility was absolute and forgiveness impossible. Is that why you didn't re-enlist? Sarah mentioned you turned down private military contracts. Blood money, he said bitterly. $200,000 a year to make the same mistakes with different consequences. Emma deserved better. A father who came home every night, even if that father was broken. Especially if he was broken. You're not broken, Victoria said firmly. You're repaired. There's a difference. Repaired things are often stronger at the mended places. He looked at her for a long moment. You sound like Ashley. Ashley's smart. It's why I hate her sometimes. That made him laugh, though he immediately winced and pressed a hand to his ribs. Don't make me laugh. Everything hurts. Good. Maybe next time you'll think twice before offering yourself as a hostage. There won't be a next time. You can't promise that. Not the way you're wired. You see danger, you step between it and innocence. It's who you are. And you swing fire extinguishers at armed men, apparently. So what does that make us? Idiots, Victoria said immediately. Brave idiots, but idiots nonetheless. They talked until dawn painted the sky pink and gold, the city awakening below them. Victoria told him about building Apex Capital, about hostile takeovers that felt like revenge, about drinking champagne alone in her penthouse, while the city glittered below like a jewelry box she owned but couldn't open. Marcus told her about fixing cars, the satisfaction of making broken things work again, about Sunday pancakes with Emma careful to make them in dinosaur shapes, about waking at 3:17 exactly every single morning, his body still keeping Afghan time. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked. Choosing this life over the money you could have made. Do you ever regret choosing money over life? He countered gently. That's not fair. Sure it is. We both made choices based on trauma. You chose attack. I chose retreat. You chose wealth as armor. I chose simplicity as camouflage. Neither of us chose healing. So what do we do now? Maybe we try something different, together. A knock interrupted them. Ashley Novak entered carrying coffee and a bag from a bakery, looking suspiciously unsurprised to find Victoria there. I heard about yesterday she said, setting down her offerings. Made the news. Local veteran stops cafe robbery, saves 20 lives. They're calling you a hero, Marcus. They're wrong. They're right, Victoria corrected. I was there. Ashley looked between them, noting their joined hands. Victoria's destroyed designer outfit, the way they seemed to exist in a bubble of shared understanding. So my setup worked, she said smugly. Your setup nearly got us killed, Victoria pointed out. But it didn't. And now you two have the ultimate meet-cute story. We met during an armed robbery, beats we met on Tinder every time. You're a menace, Marcus told her. I'm a genius. You two were perfect for each other. You just needed something to break through your respective walls. Apparently that something was armed robbery. You couldn't have just invited us both to dinner like a normal person, Victoria asked. Would either of you have shown your real selves over appetizers, Marcus? You would have been polite and distant. Victoria, you would have been cruel and dismissive. You needed crisis to strip away the masks. She had a point, though Victoria would never admit it out loud. Ashley stayed for an hour, filling the silence when it grew too heavy, bridging the gap between who Victoria and Marcus had been and who they might become. When she left, she kissed both their foreheads like a blessing. Don't fuck this up, she told them. You've both been alone long enough. The doctor discharged Marcus that afternoon with strict instructions. No lifting, no strenuous activity, follow up with his primary care physician, watch for signs of infection. Victoria drove him home in her Tesla, which looked absurdly out of place in his working-class neighborhood in Queens. His apartment was small but meticulously clean, everything in its place with military precision. The walls were covered in Emma's artwork dinosaurs mostly, but also pictures of a stick figure in camo labeled Daddy, and another stick figure with a badge labeled Sergeant, who was apparently the dog. Sergeant turned out to be a German shepherd with 3 legs and eyes that tracked everything with the same hypervigilance as his owner. IED, Marcus explained, seeing Victoria's surprise. Not mine, he was a military working dog in Iraq. His handler didn't make it. They were going to put him down, but I knew someone who knew someone. Cost me 3 months of savings to ship him here, but Emma loves him. The dog sniffed Victoria suspiciously, then apparently decided she was acceptable, leaning against her legs hard enough to nearly knock her over. He likes you, Marcus said, surprised. He usually takes weeks to warm up to people. Professional recognizes professional, Victoria said, scratching behind the dog's ears. We're both guard dogs who forgot how to do anything else. Marcus showed her around Emma's room painted purple with dinosaur decals, his room Spartan, except for a photo of his squad on the nightstand, the kitchen, where he made dinosaur pancakes, the small garage where he fixed cars for neighbors who couldn't afford shop rates. It's not much, he said, suddenly self-conscious. It's a home, Victoria said, meaning it. My place is a museum. This is a home. That evening, Emma returned from her mother's house, chattering about school, about her science project on Venus, about how Tommy Martinez had eaten a bug at recess for $5. She showed no surprise at finding Victoria in their apartment, simply accepting her presence the way children accept changes that adults would question. Are you staying for dinner? Emma asked Victoria. Daddy makes spaghetti on Wednesdays. It's not shaped like dinosaurs, though. Spaghetti doesn't work that way. I should go, Victoria said, suddenly aware she'd been there for hours. I have work. Stay, Marcus said quietly. Please. So she stayed, helping Emma set the table with mismatched plates while Marcus moved carefully around the kitchen, favoring his injured side, but refusing to let Victoria take over. I've been cooking for Emma since she was 3, he said. A few stitches aren't going to stop me now. The spaghetti was simple jarred sauce, nothing fancy, but watching Marcus and Emma's practiced rhythm, the way they moved around each other in the small kitchen, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years, longing for something money couldn't buy. Do you know about Venus? Emma asked Victoria over dinner. Tell me. The pressure there would squish you flat in 1 second. Daddy says it's like being under 900 meters of ocean, except the ocean is made of carbon dioxide, and the temperature is 900 degrees. That's very specific. Daddy helps with my projects. He's good at math. Emma twirled her spaghetti expertly. Are you good at math? I run a hedge fund. Math is basically my job. Emma considered this. So you could help with my project too. Victoria caught Marcus's eye. He was watching her carefully, gauging her reaction to his daughter's casual inclusion of her in their life. If your dad says it's okay, Victoria said. It's okay, Emma decided before Marcus could respond. We need all the help we can get. Tommy Martinez is doing Jupiter, and he has 2 parents helping. After dinner, Victoria helped with dishes while Emma did homework at the kitchen table, Sergeant sprawled beneath her feet. The domesticity of it made Victoria's chest tight. She kept waiting for the moment when it would feel wrong, when her presence would seem intrusive, but it never came. You're good with her, Marcus said quietly, handing her a plate to dry. She's easy to be good with. She's like you, direct, honest, no games. She's better than me. Still believes people are basically good. You don't? I believe people are basically people, capable of both good and evil, often in the same moment. The men who tried to rob the cafe, were they evil? Victoria considered. Tommy wasn't. He was desperate. And if his daughter had really been kidnapped, if paying ransom was the only way to save her, would robbing the cafe have been evil then? I don't know. Neither do I. That's what war taught me. Morality is cleaner in theory than practice. Those men I killed in Afghanistan, they were sons, fathers, brothers. They believed they were protecting their families, their way of life. Were they evil? They were trying to kill you, and I was invading their country. From their perspective, I was evil. Victoria dried the last plate, slowly processing this. So how do you live with that, the ambiguity? You do what you think is right in the moment with the information you have. You protect who you can, you try to minimize harm, and you accept that sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. Like offering yourself as a hostage, like swinging a fire extinguisher at an armed man. They looked at each other across the small kitchen, two damaged people recognizing something in each other that might be either salvation or destruction. "Daddy?" Emma called from the table. "How do you spell atmospheric?" The moment broke, but its echo remained. Victoria left at 9 after Emma's bedtime ritual, which apparently involved 3 stories, 2 songs, an extensive negotiation about whether Saturday's soccer game meant she could stay up late Friday. "Will you come to my game?" Emma asked Victoria from her purple bed. Victoria looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. "If you want me there." "I do. You can explain the offside rule to Daddy. He still doesn't get it." "I get it," Marcus protested. "I just think it's unnecessarily complicated." "Everything's complicated to you," Emma said, with the devastating honesty of children. "That's why you're always thinking so hard." Outside by Victoria's Tesla, the spring night was warm and full of promise. The sounds of the neighborhood music from open windows, kids playing despite the hour, dogs barking, conversations, created a symphony completely different from the manufactured quiet of Victoria's penthouse. "Thank you," Marcus said. "For today. For staying." "Thank you for not dying," Victoria replied, aiming for light but hitting something deeper. "I should warn you," he said. "If you come Saturday, you're entering the soccer parent ecosystem. It's more dangerous than Afghanistan. Those mothers are ruthless. I negotiate hostile takeovers for a living. I think I can handle suburban soccer moms." Famous last words. They stood there, neither moving toward goodbye nor hello, suspended in the space between what was and what might be. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria admitted. "Date or whatever this is. I haven't been on a real date since Richard." "This wasn't exactly a typical first date." "No, but maybe that's good. Typical hasn't worked for either of us." Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his soap, something simple and clean, nothing like the expensive cologne Richard had worn. "Can I kiss you, he asked. "You're asking permission." "After everything today." "Today was combat. This is scarier." She kissed him instead of answering, gentle, mindful of his injuries, nothing like the conquering kisses she'd known before. This was a question, an exploration, a possibility. When they parted, his hand touched her face gently. "Saturday," he said. "Game starts at 10. "I'll bring coffee." "Neither of us likes coffee." "Then I'll bring something else." She drove home through Queens, then Manhattan, watching the neighborhoods change from working class to wealthy, the buildings growing taller and more glass-wrapped with each mile. By the time she reached her building, handed her keys to the valet, rode the private elevator to her penthouse, she felt like she'd traveled between worlds. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Immaculate, expensive, empty. The cleaning service had been through erasing any evidence that a human actually lived here. The silence was complete, manufactured by soundproofing that had cost more than Marcus probably made in a year. She walked to her home office, past the photographs of her with CEOs and politicians, past the framed magazine covers calling her the Ice Queen of Wall Street, past the champagne bottle she'd been saving for when she finally felt successful enough. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 3 years building walls high enough that no one could hurt her, and a single father who fixed cars had walked through them like they were made of tissue paper. Her phone buzzed with messages she'd ignored all day. Her CFO wondering why she'd missed the quarterly review. Her mother asking if she'd seen the news about the robbery. 3 different board members checking if she was all right, their concern clearly more about stock prices than her welfare. She deleted them all without responding. Instead, she pulled up Marcus's contacts saved under his full name, now not mechanic, and typed "Made it home. Thank you for today." His response came quickly, "Thank you for staying." Then, a moment later, "Emma wants to know if you have dinosaur pajamas for the sleepover she's apparently planning." Victoria smiled, something loosening in her chest. "Tell her I'll get some." "You don't have to, actually." "I know, but I want to." She did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She ran a bath. Not a quick shower between meetings, but an actual bath with bubbles Emma would probably approve of. As she soaked, she thought about the day, about how a morning that had started with her usual armor of cruelty had ended with a 7-year-old asking her about Venus. The phone rang, her mother not giving up. "Victoria, I saw the news. Were you really there?" "I was." "Thank God you're all right. Though what were you doing in that part of town?" "Meeting someone." "Anyone I know?" Victoria thought about how to describe Marcus to her mother, who measured worth in stock portfolios and country club memberships. "No, he's different." "Different how?" "He fixes cars. Has a daughter. He's a veteran." The silence stretched long enough that Victoria checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "You're dating a mechanic." Her mother's voice pitched high with disbelief. "I'm considering it." "Victoria, darling, I know Richard hurt you, but surely you don't need to lower your standards quite that dramatically." "He saved 23 people today, Mother, including me." "Well, that's admirable, but—" "Goodbye, Mother." She hung up something she'd never done before. It felt liberating. The next morning, Thursday, Victoria walked into Apex Capital's offices with butterfly bandages on her palms from glass cuts and a bruise on her shoulder from the fire extinguisher's recoil. Her assistant James did a double take. "Ms. Blackwood, are you—" "I'm fine. Clear my schedule for Saturday morning." "You have the Tokyo conference call." "Reschedule it." James, who'd worked for her for 2 years and never seen her reschedule anything for personal reasons, nodded slowly. "Of course. May I ask—" "I have a soccer game to attend." She left him standing there, mouth open, and walked into the conference room where her senior staff was waiting for the morning brief. They all stood when she entered, respect or fear, she'd never cared which. "Sit," she said, then paused. "Please." The addition of that single word caused more reaction than if she'd announced aliens had landed. The meeting proceeded normally until Harrison, her CFO, presented the quarterly numbers. Usually, Victoria would have eviscerated him for the 2% shortfall in projections. Instead, she found herself thinking about Tommy, desperate enough to rob a cafe for his daughter. "Harrison," she said, interrupting his nervous explanation, "do we still have that employee hardship fund?" Yes, though it hasn't been used in years." "Reactivate it. Increase the funding by 500%. Make sure every employee knows it's available for medical emergencies. Family crises, unexpected expenses." Harrison blinked. That's very generous. It's practical. Desperate people make desperate choices. I'd rather help our employees than have them rob cafes." The room went silent. Everyone had heard about yesterday's incident, but no one had dared bring it up. "Is there a problem with that?" Victoria asked, and there was enough of her old edge in the question to make everyone quickly shake their heads. After the meeting, she stood at her office window looking down at the city 52 floors below. People moved like ants, their individual struggles invisible from this height. She'd spent 3 years up here pretending distance meant strength. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Marcus Emma holding up her Venus project, grinning with a gap where she'd lost a tooth. "Science fair is next Tuesday, if you want to come," his message read. "I'll be there," she replied immediately, already mentally rescheduling the board meeting that conflicted. Friday came with spring rain that turned the city gray and impressionistic. Victoria worked from home, something she rarely did, fielding calls from her couch, while watching the rain streak her windows. Every call felt surreal, discussing billions of dollars, while thinking about dinosaur pajamas. At lunch, she did something she hadn't done in years. She went shopping for herself, not for image or armor, but for comfort. She bought jeans that actually fit sneakers that would survive a soccer field, and yes, pajamas with dinosaurs on them. The teenage cashier at Target looked at the pajamas, then at Victoria in her business suit. "Gift?" she asked. "For me, actually." The girl smiled. "Cool. Dinosaurs are having a moment." That evening, Marcus called. "How are the ribs?" Victoria asked. "Sore, but healing. How's the corporate world?" "Confused. I said please in a meeting, and everyone thought I'd had a stroke." His laugh was warm, filling her apartment with something that had been missing. "Emma's been telling everyone at school that you're coming to her game tomorrow. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay. She's She doesn't attach to people easily. My fault, probably. She learned early that Daddy's friends sometimes don't come back from deployment. I'm not deploying anywhere. No, but you could disappear back into your tower. It would be easier than dealing with us. Marcus, Victoria said seriously. I spent 3 years in that tower. It's a beautiful prison, but it's still a prison. You and Emma, you're showing me there's life outside it. Life outside includes suburban soccer games with terrible coffee and aggressive parents. I've survived worse. Have you, though? These parents are serious. Tommy Martinez's mom once brought a ruler to prove the referee's call was wrong. Did it work? Actually, yes. The ref reversed the call. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of spring day that made winter feel like a bad dream. Victoria arrived at the field in Queens, wearing her new jeans and sneakers, carrying a box of gourmet hot chocolate instead of coffee. She spotted Marcus and Emma immediately. He was kneeling tying her cleats while she bounced impatiently. Sergeant sat beside them wearing a vest that said, "Service dog, do not pet," though several children were petting him anyway. "Victoria," Emma shouted, breaking free from Marcus to run over. "You came." "I said I would." "People say lots of things," Emma said with wisdom beyond her years. Marcus approached more slowly, moving carefully, but looking better than he had 2 days ago. Color had returned to his face, and his eyes had lost some of their constant vigilance. "You look different," he said. "Bad different. Good different. You look comfortable." "I feel ridiculous. I haven't worn jeans since college." "You look beautiful." The compliment, simple and sincere, made her chest tight. The soccer field was already crowded with parents setting up folding chairs like they were claiming territory in a gold rush. Victoria recognized the type immediately competitive parents living through their children, the same species that populated private school boards and charity galas, just dressed down for Saturday morning. "That's Tommy's mom," Emma whispered, pointing to a woman with a clipboard and the bearing of a general preparing for war. "She times everything, even water breaks." "And that's Sarah," Marcus said, nodding toward his ex-wife, who stood with a man who must be her new husband, soft-faced, wearing a cardigan, despite the warm morning holding a baby on his hip. Sarah approached them with careful friendliness. "Victoria, nice to see you again. This is my husband, David." David shifted the baby to shake hands. His grip was gentle, nothing like Marcus's calloused strength. "Heard you had quite an introduction to Marcus's world," David said. "He tends to attract trouble." "I think trouble finds him," Victoria corrected, watching Marcus's jaw tighten slightly. "Same difference," David said with the casual dismissiveness of someone who'd never had to distinguish between hunting and being hunted. Emma tugged on Victoria's hand. "Come meet my team." The 7-year-old swarmed around Emma, peppering Victoria with questions. "Are you Emma's mom?" one asked. "No." Emma said, "She's Daddy's friend. She hit a bad guy with a fire extinguisher." This immediately elevated Victoria to hero status among the second graders. The game itself was chaos, 14 kids chasing a ball in a clump, occasionally remembering they were supposed to be in positions. Victoria found herself cheering louder than she'd ever cheered for anything, including hostile takeovers worth billions. "She's got good feet," a father next to them commented. "Your daughter." "She's—" Victoria started to correct him, then caught Marcus's eye. He was smiling something soft and unguarded. "She's amazing." At halftime, Emma ran over sweaty and grass-stained and radiantly happy. "Did you see my almost goal, Bosma?" "It was perfect," Victoria said. "The goalie just got lucky." "That's what Daddy says, too." Emma grabbed Victoria's water bottle, drank deeply, then ran back to her team. "You're good at this," Marcus said quietly. "At what? Being present, being real, being here." "It's easier than I expected. No one here cares about my portfolio or my reputation. They just care if I brought snacks." "Did you bring snacks?" Victoria produced a bag of orange slices and juice boxes from her designer purse, making Marcus laugh. "You're really committing to this soccer mom thing." "I'm a quick study." The second half was more of the same enthusiastic chaos with occasional moments of actual soccer. Emma scored a goal probably by accident, but the celebration was real. She ran straight to Victoria and Marcus jumping into their arms. Did you see? Did you see? We saw, they said in unison, then looked at each other over Emma's head, something passing between them that felt like possibility. After the game, as parents packed up chairs and rounded up sugar-hyped children, Tommy Martinez's mother approached Victoria. "You're the woman from the news," she said, "the one at the cafe." Victoria tensed, but the woman continued, "Thank you. My sister was there with her baby. You and Mr. Chen saved their lives." Before Victoria could respond, the woman hugged her fierce and quick, then walked away wiping her eyes. "That happened often?" Victoria asked Marcus. "People thanking you for being a hero? You'll have to tell me." They went for pizza after Emma insisting Victoria sit next to her, chattering about the game, about school, about everything and nothing. Other families filled the restaurant, the noise cheerful and overwhelming. Victoria's phone buzzed with work calls she didn't answer. "You can take that," Marcus said, noticing. "No," Victoria said, surprising herself. "I can't." That evening, after Emma was at Sarah's for the night, Marcus and Victoria sat on his small back porch. Sargent sprawled between them. The spring evening was warm, the air full of barbecue smoke and distant music. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, "about what you said, about choosing to adapt into something harder. And I adapted into something smaller, quieter, less visible. I thought if I made myself small enough, unthreatening enough, the universe would stop noticing me, stop taking things. Did it work? No. It just meant I had less to give Emma, less to give anyone." Victoria pulled her knees to her chest, a gesture that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "I adapted into something meaner," she said. "I thought if I was the one drawing blood, I couldn't bleed. Did that work? No, it just meant I was always covered in blood, mine or someone else's." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd chosen opposite responses to trauma finding middle ground. "I have a proposition," Victoria said suddenly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Not that kind. Well, not just that kind." She took a breath. "I want to learn to be human again. You want to learn to be visible again. Maybe we could help each other. Like exposure therapy. Like practice. You practice taking up space, I practice not taking up all the space. You practice trusting, I practice being trustworthy. We both practice this." She gestured between them. "With Emma involved, it's not just practice," Marcus warned. "She's already attached. If this doesn't work, then we handle it like adults. We put her first. But Marcus, what if it does work?" He looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd walked into his life wearing armor, worth more than his car, who'd saved his life with a fire extinguisher and terrible aim, who'd brought dinosaur pajamas to his daughter's soccer game. "Okay," he said. "We practice." She kissed him then deeper than before, less careful. His hand tangled in her hair and she felt something in her chest crack open, not breaking, but breaking free. Sunday came soft and lazy. Victoria had stayed over sleeping in Marcus's bed while he took the couch despite his injuries. She'd protested, but he'd insisted with the kind of quiet stubbornness she was learning was his default. She woke to the smell of coffee, which neither of them drank, and found Marcus in the kitchen making it anyway. "Force of habit," he explained. "I make it every morning, then pour it out." "That's insane. That's ritual. Sometimes the repetition matters more than the result." She understood that thinking of her own morning rituals, checking stock futures, she could recite from memory, reading emails, she could predict, maintaining routines that had replaced actual living. "Teach me something," she said suddenly. "Like what?" "Something with your hands, something real." He led her to the garage where an old motorcycle sat partially disassembled. 1973 Honda CB750, he said, running his hand along the tank with something approaching reverence. "Found it in a salvage yard. I've been rebuilding it for 2 years." "Why so long?" "No deadline, that's the point. Some things shouldn't be rushed." He showed her how to clean spark plugs, his hands over hers, guiding her through the motion. She was terrible at it, too impatient, too used to delegating anything manual. But his patience was infinite, correcting without criticizing. "Feel that?" he asked as she reinstalled a plug. That little resistance right before it seats properly, so yeah, that's how you know it's right. Too easy means it's cross-threaded. Too hard means you're forcing it. Like people, she said without thinking. Exactly like people. They worked in companionable silence, Victoria's hands gradually becoming greasy, her manicure ruined. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been this dirty or this content. Why did you really come back? She asked eventually. From Afghanistan. You could have stayed, kept deploying. Marcus's hands stilled on the engine. I killed 17 people over there, he said quietly. Confirmed kills, they call them, like they're achievements in a video game. 17 people who had families, dreams, favorite foods. I told myself it was necessary that I was protecting democracy or our way of life, or whatever we were supposed to be doing, but really I was just very good at killing people. He resumed working movements, careful and precise. Emma was born during my second deployment. Sarah sent videos, first smile, first tooth, first step. I was missing everything, and for what? So I could become better at something that was destroying me. I came back because I wanted to build things instead of breaking them, fix things instead of destroying them, be Emma's father instead of America's weapon. Victoria absorbed this thinking about her own choices. I've destroyed dozens of companies, she said, hostile takeovers that left thousands unemployed. I told myself it was business, that I was maximizing shareholder value, but really, I was just very good at breaking things. Why? Because Richard broke me and I decided if I had to be broken, I'd be the sharpest piece in the pile. Marcus turned to face her fully, a socket wrench still in his hand. You're not broken, he said firmly. You're wounded. There's a difference. Is there? Broken things can't be fixed. Wounded things heal, sometimes stronger than before. Is that what we're doing? Healing. Maybe. Or maybe we're just learning to live with our scars. Monday morning arrived too soon. Victoria stood in Marcus's small bathroom trying to make herself presentable for the corporate world with limited resources. Her weekend clothes hung on the back of the door, so different from the armor she was putting back on. You could call in sick, Marcus suggested from the doorway. I own the company. Who would I call? Good point. She turned to face him, fully dressed in her business suit, except for her shoes. I look ridiculous, don't I? Like I'm playing dress-up. You look like someone who lives in two worlds. I don't know how to reconcile them. This Victoria, she gestured at her suit, would eat that Victoria. She pointed at her weekend clothes for breakfast. Or maybe they're both, you just different facets, like Emma. She's different at school than at home, different with me than with Sarah. Still, Emma. When did you become philosophical? 3 a.m. in Afghanistan gives you lots of time to think. She kissed him goodbye at his door, not caring if neighbors saw. Dinner tomorrow? She asked. My place? Your tower? My home? Or what I'm trying to make into one? The drive to Manhattan was schizophrenic. Queens to Midtown, working class, to wealthy Marcus's world to hers. By the time she reached her office, she felt like she'd traveled through time as well as space. James, her assistant, did a double take when she walked in. Ms. Blackwood, you look different. How so? He scrambled for words. Less sharp. Good, she said, surprising him. The day proceeded normally until the afternoon board meeting. Harrison was presenting acquisition targets, companies ripe for hostile takeover. Victoria found herself thinking about the employees in those companies, people like Mrs. Rodriguez, whom Marcus fixed cars for people with children and mortgages and medical bills. Stop, she said suddenly. Harrison paused mid-sentence. Is there a problem with the analysis? Yes, it doesn't include the human cost. The room went silent. Board members exchanged glances. The human cost, Richardson, the lead board member, repeated slowly. How many jobs will be lost? How many families affected? What's the impact on the communities where these companies operate? That's not typically part of our assessment matrix, Harrison said carefully. Then change the matrix. Richardson leaned forward. Victoria, are you feeling all right? This isn't like you. You're right, she said. It's not like the old me. The old me would have seen these companies as prey their employees as acceptable casualties. The new me understands that sustainable business isn't built on destruction. The new you, Richardson's tone was dangerous. Victoria stood moving to the window that overlooked the city. 3 days ago, I watched a man offer himself as a hostage to save strangers. He could have stayed hidden, could have protected himself, but he chose to protect others. It made me realize I've spent 3 years being proud of my ability to destroy when I could have been building. Building doesn't generate the same returns, Richardson pointed out, doesn't it? What's the long-term value of a company that's known for creation versus destruction? What's the reputational worth of being trusted versus feared? Fear is more reliable than trust, Richardson said. Is it fear makes people desperate? Desperate people do desperate things, like rob cafes when they can't pay ransoms. She turned back to the room. I'm proposing we shift our strategy. Instead of hostile takeovers, we look for struggling companies we can rehabilitate. Instead of destroying jobs, we create them. Instead of being corporate raiders, we become corporate healers. The silence was deafening. That's... Harrison started, then stopped. Naive, idealistic, unbusinesslike, Victoria supplied. Revolutionary, he finished. Richardson stood. This is unacceptable. The board won't support such a radical shift. Then the board can find a new CEO, Victoria said calmly. The boardroom erupted. Richardson's face turned purple. Other board members started talking over each other, and Harrison looked like he might faint. Victoria stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos calm, as Marcus had been when facing down armed gunmen. You can't be serious, Richardson finally managed. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. This is financial suicide. Our investors will adapt or divest, their choice. Richardson gathered himself using his height advantage to loom over her. You're having some kind of breakdown. The robbery clearly traumatized you. The robbery clarified things for me, Victoria corrected. For 3 years, I've been the corporate equivalent of those gunmen taking what I wanted through force, justifying it as necessary, leaving wreckage behind. I'm done with that. The board will vote you out. Maybe. But until they do, I'm CEO, and I'm implementing this strategy starting immediately. She walked out, leaving them scrambling, and found James at his desk looking terrified. Should I update your resume? He asked. Update yours? She said. This is about to get interesting, and you might want to jump ship. Actually, he said slowly, I'd like to see where this goes. My father lost his job in one of our hostile takeovers 2 years ago. Took him 14 months to find another one. Victoria stopped. I didn't know that. You never asked. The truth of it hit like cold water. She'd never asked about any of her employees' lives, their struggles, their stories. They'd been resources, not people. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. James blinked, clearly shocked. Did you just apologize? I'm trying something new. Bear with me while I figure it out. That evening, Marcus and Emma arrived at Victoria's penthouse, looking like tourists visiting a museum. Emma's eyes were huge as she took in the space, the vast openness, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern art that cost more than college educations. You live here alone? Emma asked, her voice echoing slightly. Yes. Don't you get scared? Of what? Monsters, bad dreams, being alone. Victoria knelt to Emma's level. Sometimes, yes. You need a dog, Emma decided, or a daddy. Daddies make things less scary. Marcus coughed, his ears reddening. Emma. What? It's true. You check for monsters every night. That's called securing the perimeter, Marcus protested. It's called checking for monsters, Emma corrected with 7-year-old certainty. Victoria had ordered pizza, not trusting her cooking skills with Marcus's ribs still healing. They ate at her massive dining table, Emma insisting on sitting at the head, like a queen. The space that usually felt empty seemed to shrink around them, becoming more intimate. Tell me about the motorcycle, Victoria said to Marcus. Which one? You have more than one. 3 currently. The Honda you saw, a Harley that needs a new transmission, and a Kawasaki that might be beyond saving. Why motorcycles? He considered. They're honest. Every vibration tells you something. Every sound means something. You can't ignore problems or they'll kill you, plus rebuilding something everyone else gave up on. There's satisfaction in that. Like people? Emma added, then looked at Victoria. Daddy fixes broken people too, like Mr. Rodriguez down the hall. He was sad all the time after his wife died, but Daddy kept bringing him food and making him come work on cars, and now he smiles sometimes. You fix people, Victoria asked Marcus. I fix cars. Sometimes people are nearby when it happens. After dinner, Emma explored the penthouse with Sargent, who'd been surprisingly well behaved despite the abundance of expensive things to potentially destroy. Victoria found her in the home office staring at the magazine covers. Is this you? Emma asked, pointing at the Ice Queen of Wall Street cover. That was me. You look mean. I was mean. But not anymore. I'm trying not to be. Emma studied her seriously. Daddy says people can change if they really want to. He changed. He used to yell in his sleep and break things. Now he just gets quiet sometimes. Your dad's very brave. He says you're brave too. He says you saved him. He saved me first. Maybe you saved each other. Like in movies, but with more blood. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Emma, time to go. School tomorrow. Can Victoria come to my science fair? You already invited her to the science fair. I'm inviting her again, in case she forgot. I didn't forget, Victoria assured her. As they prepared to leave, Marcus pulled Victoria aside while Emma said elaborate goodbyes to every room. The board meeting, he said. James called me. James called you. I fixed his car last month. We talk sometimes. He said you basically declared war on your own board. I declared peace. They took it as war. What will you do if they vote you out? Victoria considered. I don't know. I've never not been this person successful, powerful, wealthy. Without that, who am I? You're someone who swings fire extinguishers at armed men. Someone who brings dinosaur pajamas to soccer games. Someone who's learning to change oil despite having a manicure worth more than my grocery budget. That's not a career. No, but it's a life. Emma bounced back over. Victoria, will you teach me about the stock market? Emma. Marcus started. What? She's good at math and money. I could be good at it too. The stock market isn't really for kids, Victoria began. Everything's for kids if you explain it right, Emma interrupted with devastating logic. She has a point, Marcus admitted. Okay, Victoria said. Tuesday after your science fair, I'll teach you about compound interest. What's that bachimo? Magic, basically. Money that makes more money while you sleep. Emma's eyes widened. That is magic. After they left, Victoria's penthouse felt emptier than ever. She walked through rooms that had once felt like achievements, now revealed as expensive storage for a life she wasn't living. The art on the walls chosen by a decorator meant nothing to her. The furniture, beautiful and uncomfortable, had never been broken in by actual living. She called Ashley. I think I'm having a breakdown, she said without preamble. Finally, Ashley replied. I've been waiting 3 years for this. That's not very supportive. Sure it is. You needed to break down to break through. The old Victoria was a weapon. Maybe the new one can be a person. I threatened to quit if the board doesn't support my new strategy, which is healing instead of destroying, building instead of breaking. That's beautiful. That's naive. Those aren't mutually exclusive. The best things usually are both. I might lose everything. You might gain everything, real everything, not the fake everything you've been collecting. Tuesday arrived gray and drizzly, matching the mood at Apex Capital. Victoria walked into an emergency board meeting that Richardson had called. The full board was present, faces ranging from confused to hostile. Victoria, Richardson began, we've discussed your proposed strategy shift, and it's unacceptable. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package. No. Excuse me. No severance. If you want me out, vote me out. But I'm not going quietly with a golden parachute. Make it public. Tell the world you're firing me for wanting to create instead of destroy. Richardson's face darkened. That would be unnecessarily damaging to the company's reputation. Exactly. The stalemate stretched tension thick as smoke. Harrison cleared his throat. I've run some preliminary numbers on Victoria's proposal. We didn't ask for that, Richardson snapped. No, but I did it anyway. Harrison opened his laptop. If we shift to rehabilitation instead of destruction, we lose short-term gains, yes. But long-term companies, we rehabilitate, become grateful partners, not resentful victims. Employee retention improves. Our reputation shifts from feared to respected. And there's a growing ESG investment trend that would pour money into a fund with this strategy. ESG is a fad, Richardson dismissed. ESG represents $40 trillion in global assets, Harrison countered. That's not a fad, it's the future. Another board member, Patricia Wong, spoke up. I've been uncomfortable with our methods for years, but I thought it was just business, that emotion had no place here. Victoria's proposal. It's what I've wanted to suggest, but never had the courage to voice. This is ridiculous, Richardson said. Is it? Patricia asked. We're all wealthy beyond measure. What's the point of having more money if we're destroying lives to get it? The room erupted in debate. Victoria watched, saying nothing, as her future was decided by people who'd never had guns pointed at them, never had to choose between saving themselves and saving others. Finally, a vote was called. All in favor of retaining Victoria as CEO with her new strategy. 4 hands rose. All opposed, 3 hands including Richardson's. 2 abstaining, Richardson noted with disgust. Motion carries, barely. Victoria felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. You have 1 year, Richardson warned. Show profits with this approach or you're out. 6 months, Victoria countered. I'll show you results in 6 months. After the meeting, Harrison caught up with her. Why did you really do this? He asked. Because a 7-year-old girl asked me if I was mean. And I realized I didn't want the answer to be yes anymore. That afternoon, Victoria sat in an elementary school auditorium that smelled like cafeteria food and children's energy, watching Emma present her Venus project. Emma wore a clip-on tie for science seriousness and spoke with the confidence of someone who'd been raised by a man who faced down insurgents. Venus is like Earth's evil twin, Emma explained to the judges. Same size, but everything went wrong. The pressure would squish you, the temperature would cook you, and the air is poison. It's like if Earth had a really, really bad day for 4 billion years. The judges smiled, charmed. Emma placed second, beaten by Tommy Martinez's Jupiter project with its working model of the Great Red Spot. You were robbed, Victoria told her afterward. Tommy's project was better, Emma said philosophically. His dad's an engineer, but second place is still good. Daddy says it's not about winning, it's about learning. Your daddy's right. He usually is, except about soccer. He still doesn't understand offside. That evening, Victoria made good on her promise, teaching Emma about compound interest using Skittles as visual aids. Marcus watched from the doorway, something soft in his expression. So if I save my allowance, Emma calculated carefully, in 10 years I'll have enough for a car, Victoria finished. A nice car, a reliable car. That's okay. Daddy can fix it if it breaks. After Emma went to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat on his back porch, spring evening warm around them. The board voted to keep me, she said. Good. I might fail. This new strategy might not work. It might not, he agreed. But continuing the old strategy definitely wouldn't work. Not for who you're becoming. Who am I becoming? Someone Emma wants to learn from. Someone who brings hot chocolate instead of coffee. Someone who can rebuild a carburetor despite having a business degree from Harvard. Wharton, she corrected. Same difference. They sat quietly comfortable in shared silence. I love you, Victoria said suddenly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Marcus turned to her slowly. You sure? No. Yes. Maybe. I don't know what love looks like when it's not about possession or power or proving something. But I know that when I'm with you and Emma, I feel like myself. Not the weapon I became or the victim I was, but myself. Is that love? That's better than love, Marcus said. That's recognition. Of what? Of who you could be if you stopped punishing yourself for who you were. He kissed her, then deep and sure, and Victoria felt the last of her walls crumble. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, like ice melting in spring. 6 months later, Victoria stood before the board presenting quarterly results. Apex Capital had acquired 3 struggling companies, rehabilitated them, and sold 2 for modest profits while keeping 1 as a subsidiary. The returns were lower than their slash-and-burn days, but positive. More importantly, she said, our reputation is transformed. We're getting first look at deals that wouldn't have come near us before. Employees at target companies are actually advocating for our acquisitions because they know we'll preserve jobs. Richardson, still skeptical but less hostile, reviewed the numbers. It's not what we're used to. No, Victoria agreed. It's better. It's sustainable. It's building something instead of just extracting value. After the meeting, she drove to Queens to the small church where she and Marcus were getting married. Not a massive cathedral like her first attempt, just a simple ceremony with 40 guests who actually cared about them. Emma was her maid of honor, wearing a purple dress with hidden pockets for dinosaur figures. Sarah was there with David and their kids, everyone having figured out how to be a complex modern family. Ashley was officiating, having gotten ordained online specifically for this. Do you have the rings? Ashley asked Emma during the rehearsal. Emma produced them from her dinosaur pocket. I've got them, and backup rings in my other pocket in case I lose these. That's actually very practical, Ashley admitted. Daddy taught me redundancy. 2 is 1, 1 is none. The ceremony itself was simple. No string quartets or ice sculptures or any of the elaborate decorations from Victoria's first attempt. Just people who'd learned to love each other despite or because of their damage. Victoria Tin, Marcus said in his vows, you crashed into my life like a beautiful disaster, all sharp edges and hidden softness. You saved me with a fire extinguisher and terrible aim. You taught me that hiding isn't the same as healing, that being small isn't the same as being safe. You made me want to be visible again, even though visibility means vulnerability. I love your strength, but I love your courage to be weak even more. Marcus, Victoria replied, her voice steady despite tears. You saw through my armor like it was tissue paper. You showed me that real strength isn't about destroying, but about choosing not to destroy when you could. You and Emma gave me something money couldn't buy, a reason to come down from my tower, a place to land. I love your gentleness, but I love your capacity for necessary violence even more because you choose gentleness anyway. Emma stood between them, holding both their hands as Ashley pronounced them married. The kiss was soft, a promise rather than a claiming. At the reception in Marcus's backyard decorated with lights, Emma had helped string Victoria dance with her new husband while their daughter, now the adoption papers already in process, spun wildly with Sargent. No regrets, Marcus asked. About which part? Any of it. Giving up your penthouse, scaling back your career, becoming a soccer mom in Queens. Victoria looked around at Emma, teaching Tommy Martinez the compound interest math she'd learned at Sarah and David, chatting with her mother who'd come around slowly at James from her office, dancing badly but enthusiastically with his boyfriend. The penthouse was a prison. My career was a weapon. This is a life. Even in Queens. Especially in Queens, though we should probably get a bigger place. Emma's going to need a real study space, and you need a proper garage for your motorcycles. Our motorcycles. You're getting good at rebuilding. I'm getting adequate at rebuilding. That's good enough. Yeah, Victoria agreed. Watching Emma orchestrate some complex game involving dinosaurs and stock options with the other kids. Good enough is perfect. 5 years from that violent first date, they lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn, a compromise between Manhattan and Queens. Victoria still ran Apex Capital, but it had become known as the recovery room of Wall Street, where dying companies went to be saved instead of salvaged. Marcus had opened his own garage, specializing in restoration of classic cars and motorcycles. Half his clients were Victoria's colleagues who'd discovered that working with your hands was therapeutic after working with abstract numbers all day. Emma, now 12, was terrifyingly brilliant, having absorbed Victoria's strategic mind and Marcus's tactical thinking. She'd started a school business buying and selling trading cards, applying compound interest principles with ruthless efficiency. She's going to rule the world, Victoria said, watching Emma negotiate a complex trade deal with 3 classmates. Or save it, Marcus replied. Why not both? They still had bad days. Marcus still woke at 3:17, sometimes lost in Afghan mountains. Victoria still felt the urge to strike first when threatened, but they'd learned to reach for each other in the darkness, to choose building over breaking, to trust that love could be both gentle and fierce. On the anniversary of the cafe robbery, they always went back sitting at the same table, Marcus facing the door, Victoria beside him, rather than across. The manager never charged them, and other survivors sometimes joined them, an informal reunion of people who'd learned that the worst moments could become the best if you were brave enough to rebuild. Would you do it again? Victoria asked one year, knowing everything that would happen. Step in front of guns for strangers, offer myself as a hostage. Yes. Every time, Marcus said without hesitation. It brought me you. I was horrible to you. You were scared. There's a difference. I called you simple. I am simple. I fix things. I protect people. I love my family. That's simple. And I overcomplicate everything. Not everything. Not anymore. Tommy, the gunman who'd taken hostages, was serving 3 years, but Marcus and Victoria had set up a fund for his daughter, making sure she had what she needed. Victoria had hired his cousin Diego after he recovered, giving him a second chance at a legitimate life. Why? Diego had asked when she'd offered him the job. Because desperate people make desperate choices. Give them better choices, they make better decisions. It had become her philosophy in business and life. Create opportunities instead of destroying them. Build bridges instead of burning them. Choose grace over grieving. Their life wasn't perfect. Perfect was for people who hadn't been tested, who hadn't been broken and rebuilt. Their life was better than perfect. It was real complicated, difficult, and absolutely worth every scar that had led them there. On quiet evenings when Emma was doing homework and Sargent was snoring on his bed, Victoria and Marcus would work on motorcycles in their garage, hands covered in grease, reimagining machines everyone else had abandoned. What are you thinking about? Marcus would ask when she got that distant look. How wrong I was that first day. I said working with your hands meant no real consequences. And now I know that working with your hands, building something from nothing, fixing what's broken, those are the only consequences that matter. Even for an ice queen. Especially for a former ice queen who learned that ice melts when you apply enough warmth. That's basic physics. That's advanced love. They'd continue working, rebuilding carburetors and themselves finding beauty in the broken things that could be repaired, strength in the scars that showed where they'd mended, and love in the choice to keep choosing each other, despite or because of all the reasons they shouldn't work, but did. In the end, their story wasn't about a CEO and a mechanic, or about heroism and violence, or even about redemption and revenge. It was about two people who'd adapted to trauma in opposite ways, finding a middle ground where both could heal. It was about learning that the worst first date could become the best life if you were brave enough to swing a fire extinguisher at your own defenses. And in a small cafe in Manhattan, at a table where violence had erupted and grace had emerged, a plaque appeared one day. Sometimes the worst moments become the best beginnings. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to bleed for strangers, and someone willing to swing at danger. No one knew who'd placed it there, but everyone who'd been present that day understood its meaning. Salvation came in unexpected forms sometimes, as a soldier pretending to be simple, sometimes as a CEO pretending to be strong, always as humans choosing to see past the armor to the wounds beneath, and choosing to heal together rather than bleed alone. The brownstone in Brooklyn had evolved into something more than a home. It had become a sanctuary for broken things learning to work again. The garage Marcus had built in the back had expanded twice now, housing 6 motorcycles in various stages of resurrection, and a 1967 Mustang that Victoria had bought him for their 5th anniversary. Emma, now 17, stood in that garage on a Saturday morning, her Harvard early admission letter in one hand and a wrench in the other. She'd inherited Victoria's strategic mind and Marcus's steady hands, a combination that made her equally comfortable in boardrooms and engine bays. You're overthinking it, Marcus told her as she struggled with a stubborn bolt on the Mustang's transmission. I'm being thorough, Emma countered, sounding exactly like Victoria. Same thing in your case. Victoria emerged from the house carrying coffee none of them would drink, but all of them would hold a ritual that had become family tradition. "The Johnson acquisition papers came through," she announced. "We officially own the company." "How many jobs saved?" Emma asked without looking up from the engine. 342. Not bad for a Tuesday. This was their life now, casual victories measured in livelihoods preserved rather than profits extracted. Apex Capital had become the most unusual success story on Wall Street, a fund that specialized in resurrection rather than destruction. Their returns were modest by hedge fund standards, but revolutionary by human ones. The memorial garden they'd planted for Marcus's squad had grown wild and beautiful in their small backyard. 4 trees, one for each man who hadn't come home, their branches now intertwining in ways the men never got to. Marcus still talked to them sometimes, usually at 3:17 in the morning when the ghosts were loudest, but now Victoria was there to listen to, remind him that survival wasn't betrayal. "Mrs. Chen Rodriguez is here," Emma announced, using the name Victoria had chosen. Both surnames hyphenated, neither taking precedence, both carrying equal weight. Sarah appeared in the garage doorway, her youngest son on her hip. The complex family, they'd built ex-wives and current wives, half-siblings and step-siblings. The biology of family, expanded by choice, had become a model for how broken things could be reassembled into something stronger. "David's hosting Sunday dinner tomorrow," Sarah said. "Can you make it?" "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus replied, and meant it. The jealousy and awkwardness of the early years had mellowed into genuine friendship. Sarah had found the soft man she needed. Marcus had found the warrior who matched his damage. Both marriages worked because they'd stopped trying to fix what the war had broken and started building around it instead. After Sarah left, the 3 of them worked in comfortable silence, each on different projects, but sharing the same space. This had become their Saturday tradition. No meetings, no calls, no obligations except to be present with each other and whatever needed fixing. "Tell me again about the robbery," Emma said suddenly. "You know that story by heart," Victoria replied. "I know, but I like hearing it. How you were mean and Daddy was patient. How the bad men came and you both became heroes. How everything terrible became everything perfect." "It wasn't perfect," Marcus corrected. "It was messy and bloody and terrifying. But it worked out. Eventually, after a lot of mistakes and false starts and almost giving up, Emma finally freed the stubborn bolt, grinning triumphantly. So just like fixing this transmission." Exactly like that. The afternoon dissolved into evening, and they migrated to the kitchen where Victoria attempted to cook. She'd been taking lessons for 3 years, and could now make 5 dishes that were actually edible. Marcus and Emma ate her slightly burned lasagna without complaint, though Sargent pointedly refused his portion. "Traitor," Victoria told the dog, who wagged his tail unrepentantly. After dinner, they sat on the front stoop watching Brooklyn come alive with Saturday night energy. Couples walked by, heading to dinner, families pushed strollers, teenagers laughed in groups. It was a different world from Victoria's penthouse isolation or Marcus's Queen's Fortress, a middle ground where both of them could exist. "I've been thinking," Emma said, "about what I want to study at Harvard." "Business," Victoria guessed. "Engineering," Marcus suggested. "Psychology," Emma said. "Specifically, trauma psychology. I want to understand how people break and how they rebuild. How 2 people as different as you could find each other and make it work." Victoria and Marcus exchanged glances over Emma's head. "That's a big field," Victoria said carefully. "Someone has to do it. There are so many people walking around in armor they don't need anymore or hiding when they could be living. Maybe I can help them the way you helped each other." "We had help," Marcus pointed out. "Ashley, Sarah, even the robbery in a twisted way. But mostly you had the courage to try," Emma said. "That's what I want to teach people, that trying is brave, that failing is okay, that rebuilding is possible." A car backfired down the street, and Marcus didn't flinch, progress measured in small victories. Victoria's phone buzzed with an emergency from work, and she ignored it. Boundaries established through practice. "I want to tell you both something." Emma said, her voice serious in a way that made both parents focus completely. "I know I'm not biologically yours, Mom," she said to Victoria. And I know you struggled with becoming a parent, but you chose me every day even when it was hard. That means more than DNA ever could." Victoria's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide anymore. "And Dad," Emma continued, turning to Marcus, "I know you came back broken from the war. I know some nights you're fighting battles I can't see, but you never let that stop you from being present for me. You taught me that strength isn't about being unbreakable, it's about being broken and choosing to keep going anyway." Marcus pulled both of them into a hug, and they sat there on their Brooklyn stoop, a family forged in violence and refined in choice proof that the worst beginnings could become the best endings if you were brave enough to keep rebuilding. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, she still insisted Marcus check for monsters, though now it was more tradition than fear. Victoria and Marcus lay in their bed looking at the ceiling fan that squeaked slightly. Marcus could fix it, but chose not to. Some imperfections being worth keeping. "Do you think we did okay?" Victoria asked. "With Emma, with everything, we did the best we could with what we had." "That sounds like settling." "That sounds like acceptance. Not everything needs to be optimized, Victoria. Some things just need to be good enough. Our daughter is going to Harvard to study psychology because she watched us rebuild ourselves. That's better than good enough." "Our daughter," Marcus repeated, still amazed by the phrase even after all these years. They made love slowly, carefully, still mindful of old injuries, his ribs that ached when it rained, her heart that sometimes forgot it was safe to be vulnerable. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling, breathing synchronized. "I would do it all again," Victoria said into the darkness. "Every hostile takeover, every cruel word, every wall I built, if it led me here. Even the wedding where Richard didn't show, especially that. If he'd shown up, I'd be married to a weak man in a loveless marriage, probably with children who'd grow up thinking that was what love looked like. Instead, I have a husband who literally bled for me, a daughter who challenges me daily, and a life that's messy and complicated and absolutely perfect in its imperfection." The clock showed 3:17, and as usual, Marcus was awake. But instead of ghosts, he saw moonlight painting Victoria's face silver, heard Emma's music drifting faintly from her room, felt Sargent's weight at their feet. "They'd be proud," Victoria said, knowing where his mind went at this hour. "Your squad. They'd be proud of what you've built from the wreckage." "I hope so. I know so. You honored their sacrifice by choosing to live, really live, not just survive." The next morning brought rain and the kind of lazy Sunday that begged for staying in bed, but they had promises to keep. The cafe, their cafe as they'd come to think of it, expected them. Other survivors would be there, an informal support group that had evolved over the years. Tommy was there out on parole, his daughter beside him. He'd served his time, paid his debt, and now worked as a counselor for at-risk youth. Victoria had hired him at Apex after his release, understanding that second chances were just first chances that took longer to arrive. "Ms. Blackwood," he said, still formal after all these years. "Mr. Chen." "It's Mrs. Chen Rodriguez now," Victoria corrected gently. "And it's just Victoria." They sat at their table, the one with the plaque, and told stories. New survivors joined, sometimes people who'd faced their own violent moments and come out the other side scarred but breathing. The cafe owner never charged them, saying their presence was payment enough, a reminder that his establishment had been the site of transformation, not just trauma. "What's the lesson?" a young woman asked, new to the group, her own trauma still fresh. "What are we supposed to learn from violence?" "That's the wrong question," Marcus said gently. "Violence doesn't teach lessons, it just happens. The lesson comes from what you do after, whether you let it define you or refine you." "How do you know the difference?" "You don't," Victoria said. "You just keep choosing every day to be more than what happened to you. Some days you'll fail. That's okay. The next day you choose again." The autumn morning arrived, crisp and golden leaves crunching beneath Victoria's boots as she walked through Prospect Park with Marcus and Sargent III. The original Sargent had passed peacefully 2 years prior, and Emma had insisted on continuing the tradition with another three-legged rescue. "She's nervous," Marcus observed, watching their daughter pace near the park's entrance, her phone clutched in her hand. "She's Emma. She doesn't get nervous," so Victoria replied, though she was watching their daughter with the same concern. At 17, Emma had grown into a formidable young woman, Harvard-bound with early admission, having built a nonprofit that taught financial literacy to kids in underserved communities. She'd inherited Victoria's strategic mind and Marcus's protective instincts, creating someone who could both build empires and defend the vulnerable. "First date?" a familiar voice asked behind them. They turned to find Tommy, the former gunman, approaching with his daughter, Sophia, now 15 and thriving despite everything. Tommy had been released after 18 months for good behavior and now worked as a counselor for at-risk youth, using his story as a cautionary tale and inspiration. "How did you know?" Victoria asked. "Emma told Sophia everything. They're best friends, remember? Plus she asked to borrow Sophia's lucky necklace." The strange friendship between the girls had developed naturally, Emma drawn to Sophia's resilience, Sophia to Emma's fierce loyalty. That their fathers' lives had intersected so violently seemed to strengthen rather than complicate their bond. "Who's the boy?" Tommy asked. "Girl," Marcus corrected. "Her name's Diana. They met at the financial literacy program." Tommy nodded, no judgment in his expression. Prison had changed him. Or maybe it had simply revealed who he'd always been beneath the desperation, a good man who'd made terrible choices for understandable reasons. "You saved my daughter," Tommy said suddenly, something he said every time they met. "Both of you. The fund you set up, the job you gave Diego, the letters you wrote to the parole board. You had every reason to let me rot, but you didn't. You were trying to save your daughter, too," Victoria said, her standard response. "We just had better tools than guns." They watched Emma's date arrive, a tall girl with confidence in her stride and kindness in her smile. Emma's entire demeanor changed, softening from general to teenager, from formidable to vulnerable. "God, she looks like you that first day," Marcus told Victoria. "All armor and sharp edges, pretending not to care." "She looks like you, sir," Victoria countered. "Hyper-vigilant, checking exits, ready to protect or retreat." "She looks like herself," Tommy offered. "Someone who knows both violence and grace exist, and chooses grace anyway." The afternoon brought them to Marcus's garage, now a thriving business with 6 employees and a waiting list stretching months. What had started as therapeutic tinkering had become one of the most respected restoration shops on the East Coast. But Saturdays were still family days, Marcus, Victoria, and Emma working side by side on whatever project had captured their interest. Today, it was a 1961 Triumph Bonneville found rusting in a barn upstate, seemingly beyond salvation. The frame's shot. Emma observed her hands as comfortable with tools as they were with spreadsheets. "And the engine block has hairline cracks." "So we should give up?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested this was a teaching moment. "No," Emma and Victoria said in unison. "We should figure out what can be saved and rebuild around it," Emma continued. "The tank's good, the wheels can be restored. We can source a new frame, rebuild the engine with modern improvements." "Make it better than original," Victoria suggested. "Different than original," Emma corrected. "Not better or worse, just adapted to what it needs to be now." Marcus smiled, the proud look of a parent whose child had absorbed the right lessons. "Like people," Victoria said, running her hand along the rusted metal. "Everything's like people with you two," Emma complained with teenage exasperation, but she was smiling. They worked until sunset, 3 generations of chosen family, rebuilding something everyone else had abandoned. Emma talked about her date. Diana was brilliant, wanted to be a civil rights lawyer, had a laugh that made Emma's stomach flip. "Is it serious?" Victoria asked carefully. "It's a first date, Mom. Everything doesn't have to be life or death." "Your parents met during an armed robbery," Marcus pointed out. "We might have skewed your perspective on normal relationship progression." "You definitely did. Diana asked how my parents met, and I said, Dad offered himself as a hostage, and Mom hit someone with a fire extinguisher, and she thought I was joking." "You could just say we met at a cafe," Victoria suggested. "Where's the fun in that?" That evening, they had dinner with Victoria's mother, who'd moved to a senior living facility in Brooklyn after finally accepting that her daughter's life choices, while unconventional, had produced genuine happiness. "I still think you could have done better," her mother said, though she squeezed Marcus's hand affectionately as she said it. "Better than someone who literally took bullets for her," Emma asked incredulously. He was only grazed, Victoria's mother corrected primly. Let's not be dramatic. Grandma, you once called the cops because someone parked in your spot at Whole Foods. That's different. That was about principle. Marcus caught Victoria's eye, both of them trying not to laugh. Her mother had come a long way from the woman who'd been horrified by her daughter dating a mechanic. Now she bragged to her bridge club about her son-in-law, the war hero, and her granddaughter, the humanitarian. After dinner, walking home through Brooklyn streets that had become as familiar as breathing, they passed the site of Marcus's old apartment in Queens. The building had been demolished, replaced by luxury condos neither of them could have afforded in their previous lives. Do you miss it? Victoria asked. The apartment, no. But sometimes I miss the simplicity of that life. Just Emma and me fixing cars, no complications. Was it really simpler? Marcus considered. No, it was smaller. I'd made my world so small I could control it, but that's not the same as simple. And now it's big and messy and complicated, and I wouldn't change any of it. They walked past the cafe where it had all started. It had changed ownership twice, was now a juice bar called Renewal, which felt cosmically appropriate. But the table by the window was still there, and sometimes they still stopped for drinks neither of them wanted just to remember. I hated you that day, Victoria admitted. No, you hated yourself. I was just convenient. When did you know you loved me? When you stayed at the hospital. You had no reason to. Everything in your programming should have sent you back to your tower, but you stayed. When did you know I loved you? When you brought dinosaur pajamas to Emma's soccer game. You can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake showing up for a kid's soccer game at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. I've been to every game since. I know. She knows. That matters. Their brownstone was warm with light when they arrived home. Emma already there, having gotten back from her date. She was in the kitchen making hot chocolate, real hot chocolate, not the powder kind, something Victoria had taught her. How was it? Victoria asked. Good, really good. We're going to the Museum of Natural History next week. The dinosaur exhibits? Marcus guessed. The planetarium, actually. Diana's into astrophysics. She wants to show me something about Venus. Victoria and Marcus exchanged looks, remembering Emma's second-grade science fair project that had started everything. Venus is still a hellscape, Emma added, but Diana says there might be life in the cloud layer. Extremophiles that adapted to conditions that would kill anything else. Like people, Victoria said without thinking. Emma rolled her eyes. Mom, not everything is a metaphor. But most things are, Marcus added, pulling both his girls into a hug that Emma pretended to resist, but actually leaned into. Later, after Emma had gone to bed still checking in despite being 17, some rituals too important to outgrow. Victoria and Marcus stood on their roof deck, the city spreading out below them like a circuit board of light. Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been? Victoria asked. If the robbery hadn't happened. If any of it hadn't happened. If Richard hadn't left me, if you hadn't gone to war, if Ashley hadn't set us up, if those men hadn't chosen that cafe. That's a lot of ifs. But do you think about it? Marcus pulled her closer. Sometimes. But then I think about chaos theory, how tiny changes in initial conditions create massive differences in outcomes. Every terrible thing that happened to us was an initial condition for this life. Remove any of them, and maybe we never meet. Maybe Emma grows up without you. Maybe you stay in your tower. Maybe I stay hidden in Queens. So you're saying we needed the pain. I'm saying the pain happened, and we can either let it define us or let it refine us. We chose refinement. That's very philosophical for a mechanic. That's very understanding for a CEO. They stood there, two people who'd been broken in different ways, who'd found each other in violence, and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Below them, the city hummed with 8 million stories, none quite like theirs. I love you, Victoria said, words that had once seemed impossible now coming as easily as breathing. I love you too, Marcus replied, pressing a kiss to her temple, sharp edges and all. I'm softer now. No, you're just selective about who sees the softness. That's different. And you're harder now. No, I'm just selective about when to be hard. That's growth. A text from Emma interrupted them. I can hear you being metaphorical from my room. Please stop. They laughed. heading back inside to their perfectly imperfect life. A former CEO who'd learned to build instead of break, a former soldier who'd learned to be visible instead of hidden, and their daughter who'd learned from both of them that strength came in many forms. Love was worth the risk, and sometimes the worst moments really did become the best beginnings. In the garage, the Triumph waited patiently for resurrection. Tomorrow, they'd work on it more, three people rebuilding something broken into something better, not perfect, never perfect, but functional and beautiful in its imperfection. Just like them. Just like everyone, if they were brave enough to try. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.